My boyfriend looks at the forms of other girls and I don't like it. Navigating the complexities of young love can be incredibly challenging, especially when insecurities come into play. I remember being 15 and feeling like every emotion was amplified, as if I was living in an intense, real-life drama. That's when I met Jake. He was 16, with dark hair and a laid-back charm that I found irresistible. Our relationship felt perfect, like a fairy tale come to life. But, as with all stories, not everything was as perfect as it seemed. About 4 months into our relationship, I discovered something that turned my world upside down. I caught Jake looking at pictures of other women online. These weren't just any women, they had features I felt I could never measure up to: curvy figures, radiant smiles, and an air of confidence that I felt I lacked. Seeing those images made me feel like I'd been hit by a truck. I could barely breathe, and my self-esteem took a nosedive. Jake didn't understand why it was a big deal. We had watched some adult content together before, so he thought it was no different. But to me, those images were a symbol of everything I feared I wasn't. They represented everything I thought Jake might want instead of me. I started crying almost every night, feeling insecure and inadequate. I wondered if he secretly wished I looked like those women, if he was disappointed every time he looked at me. We talked about it, and Jake assured me that he loved me for who I was. He promised he wouldn't look at those pictures anymore. I believed him, but the damage was done. Every time I saw a pretty woman, I felt a pang of jealousy and insecurity. I couldn't help but wonder if Jake was comparing me to her. It got so bad that I would start fights over the smallest things, like him picking a character in a game that had a curvy figure or listening to a song with suggestive album art. It felt like every little thing was a reminder of my insecurities. I was sick of feeling this way, sick of worrying and feeling ugly every time I saw a woman who I thought was prettier than me. I wanted to get my confidence back, to feel secure in my relationship and in myself. But I didn't know how. I tried to push the thoughts away, to remind myself that Jake loved me and had chosen me. But the doubts kept creeping back in. One night, a few days before our 6-month anniversary, I decided I couldn't keep living like this. I needed to find a way to get over this. I started by talking to Jake again, but this time, I focused on how I was feeling rather than what he had done. I told him about my insecurities, about how seeing those pictures had made me feel. Jake listened patiently, holding my hand and reassuring me that he loved me just the way I was. Next, I decided to work on my own self-esteem. I started by focusing on things I liked about myself, both inside and out. I made a list of my strengths, things I was proud of. I also tried to spend more time doing things that made me happy, like hanging out with friends, reading, and exploring new hobbies. Slowly, I began to feel better about myself. I also realized that part of the problem was how I viewed other women. Instead of seeing them as competition, I tried to appreciate their beauty without comparing myself to them. It wasn't easy, but over time, it helped me feel less threatened. Our 6-month anniversary came and went, and while I wasn't completely over my insecurities, I felt like I was on the right path. Jake and I continued to work on our relationship, being open and honest with each other. I still had moments of doubt, but they became less frequent as I learned to trust Jake and, more importantly, to trust myself. Looking back, I realized that this experience, as painful as it was, helped me grow. It taught me the importance of communication, trust, and self-love, and while I still have my insecurities, I know that I am strong enough to face them. After all, everyone has their own unique beauty and worth, and I'm learning to embrace mine. Over time, I started to feel more secure in my relationship. Jake's consistent reassurance and the open conversations we had about my feelings helped build back the trust that had been shaken. I also found solace in confiding in close friends who offered their support and reminded me of my own worth. One particularly memorable conversation with my best friend, Sarah, stood out. She reminded me that everyone has insecurities, even those women in the pictures. She told me that confidence comes from within and that I needed to start loving myself for who I was. Her words resonated with me deeply. I began to make a conscious effort to change my inner dialogue. Instead of focusing on what I lacked, I started to celebrate my own qualities. I reminded myself daily of my strengths, both physical and emotional. I began practicing self-care, indulging in activities that made me feel good about myself. Whether it was taking long walks, writing in my journal, or simply spending time with friends and family, these activities helped me reconnect with who I was. I also decided to take a break from social media. Constantly seeing curated, seemingly perfect images of others was feeding my insecurities. This break allowed me to focus on my own reality and appreciate the beauty in my everyday life. Jake noticed the changes in me. He appreciated my efforts to rebuild my confidence and often complimented me on my progress. His support played a significant role in my journey towards self-acceptance. As our relationship progressed, we continued to grow together. We learned the importance of understanding each other's perspectives and the value of empathy. We made a pact to always communicate openly and to support each other through our insecurities. Looking back, I realized that the challenges we faced early on were a test of our relationship's strength. They forced us to confront our vulnerabilities and work through them together. Today, I am more confident and secure in myself and in our relationship. Life is a journey, and every experience, no matter how difficult, contributes to our growth. I learned that self-love and acceptance are the foundations of a healthy relationship. By facing my insecurities head-on, I was able to rebuild my confidence and strengthen my bond with Jake. And while the road wasn't easy, it was definitely worth it. Now, as I reflect on those tumultuous months, I am proud of how far I've come. I've learned to appreciate myself for who I am and to trust in the love Jake and I share. Our relationship is stronger because of the challenges we faced, and I know that as long as we continue to support and understand each other, we can overcome anything together. The changes in me didn't happen overnight. There were days when I felt like I was making no progress at all, days when I would slip back into old patterns of doubt and insecurity. But with each setback, I tried to remind myself that growth is a process, not a destination. I celebrated small victories, like feeling comfortable in my own skin for an entire day, or resisting the urge to compare myself to others. These moments, though small, were significant steps on my journey to self-love. Jake continued to be my rock throughout this process. He was patient and understanding, always willing to listen and reassure me when I needed it. We spent a lot of time talking about our feelings and fears, and these conversations brought us closer together. I realized that he had his own insecurities too, and sharing our vulnerabilities helped us understand each other better. One evening, as we were sitting in the park where we had our first date, Jake told me something that deeply touched me. He said that seeing me work through my insecurities and grow stronger made him love me even more. He admired my courage and resilience, and he was proud of the person I was becoming. His words meant the world to me, and I felt a renewed sense of determination to keep moving forward. I also found comfort in writing. I started a journal where I would pour out my thoughts and feelings. Writing became a way for me to process my emotions and reflect on my progress. I wrote about my fears, my triumphs, and everything in between. Looking back at my journal entries, I could see how much I had grown, and it motivated me to keep going. There was a particular entry that stood out to me. It was written on a day when I had felt especially low. I had seen a picture of a beautiful woman online, and the familiar wave of insecurity had washed over me. But instead of letting it consume me, I wrote about it. I described how I felt, why I felt that way, and what I could do to change my perspective. By the end of the entry, I felt a sense of clarity and strength. It was a turning point for me, a moment when I realized that I had the power to change my own narrative. Another significant moment came during a school event. I was participating in a talent show, something I would have never had the confidence to do before. I decided to perform a song that had always resonated with me, one that spoke about self-acceptance and inner strength. As I sang, I felt a surge of confidence. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud of myself. The applause and cheers from the audience were overwhelming, and Jake's beaming face in the crowd made it even more special. That night, I felt like I had truly turned a corner. I also started to appreciate the little things in life. Instead of constantly worrying about my appearance or what others thought of me, I focused on the moments of joy and connection that made life meaningful. Whether it was a sunny day, a good book, or a heartfelt conversation with a friend, I learned to cherish these moments. They reminded me that life is about more than just appearances. As I continued to grow, I noticed a change in how I viewed other women. Instead of seeing them as competition, I started to see them as individuals with their own stories and struggles. I realized that everyone has insecurities, even those who seem confident and perfect on the outside. This shift in perspective helped me feel less threatened and more compassionate. I started to celebrate other women's beauty and achievements without feeling diminished. Jake and I continued to strengthen our relationship. We made it a point to spend quality time together, doing things we both enjoyed. Whether it was hiking, watching movies, or simply talking, these moments brought us closer. We learned to appreciate each other for who we were, flaws and all. There were still challenges along the way. Sometimes old insecurities would resurface, and I would have to remind myself of how far I had come. But each time, I faced these challenges with more confidence and resilience. I knew that I had the tools and the support to overcome them. As our first anniversary approached, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace. I had grown so much over the past year, both as an individual and as part of a couple. I had learned to love myself and to trust in the love that Jake and I shared. Our relationship was stronger and more meaningful because of the obstacles we had overcome together. On the day of our anniversary, Jake surprised me with a picnic in the same park where we had our first date. As we sat under the same tree, reminiscing about our journey, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I was grateful for the love and support that had helped me grow, and for the strength I had found within myself. Jake took my hand and looked into my eyes. He told me how proud he was of me, and how much he loved me. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges we might face in the future, we would face them together. Our love had been tested and had come out stronger, and I knew that as long as we continued to communicate, to support each other, and to grow together, we could overcome anything. Looking back on those tumultuous months, I realized that they had been a crucial part of my journey. They had forced me to confront my insecurities and to find strength and confidence within myself. They had taught me the importance of self-love, communication, and trust. And most importantly, they had shown me that true love is not about perfection, but about accepting and loving each other, flaws and all. As Jake and I sat in the park watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of peace and contentment. I knew that our journey was far from over, but I was ready for whatever lay ahead. I had learned to love myself, to trust in our love, and to embrace the beauty of our imperfect, yet perfect, relationship. As time went on, I continued to discover new layers of myself and our relationship. I realized that my journey was not just about overcoming insecurities but about growing and evolving as a person. I started to explore new interests and passions, which helped me build a stronger sense of self. I took up painting, something I had always wanted to try. The process of creating art became a therapeutic outlet for me. It allowed me to express my emotions in a way that words couldn't. I also joined a local drama club, which pushed me out of my comfort zone and helped me gain confidence in my abilities. Jake was incredibly supportive of my newfound interests. He encouraged me to pursue my passions and was always there to cheer me on. His unwavering support made me feel valued and loved. It also inspired me to support him in his interests and endeavors. We became each other's biggest fans, and our bond grew even stronger. We also made it a point to keep the romance alive in our relationship. We planned regular date nights and surprises for each other. Sometimes, it was a simple movie night at home, and other times, it was a spontaneous weekend getaway. These moments of connection and fun reminded us why we fell in love in the first place. Our communication also continued to improve. We had learned the importance of being honest and open with each other. We talked about our dreams, fears, and everything in between. These conversations deepened our understanding of each other and strengthened our emotional connection. We also made it a habit to express our gratitude for each other. Whether it was a heartfelt thank you or a small gesture of appreciation, these acts of kindness reinforced our love and commitment. I learned to appreciate Jake not just for the big things he did but for the small, everyday gestures that showed his love and care. There were still moments of doubt and insecurity, but they became less frequent and less intense. Whenever I felt those old feelings creeping back in, I reminded myself of how far I had come. I also leaned on Jake and my friends for support, knowing that I didn't have to face my fears alone. One particularly challenging moment came when I saw an old acquaintance who had always made me feel inferior. Seeing her brought back a flood of insecurities. But instead of letting those feelings overwhelm me, I took a deep breath and reminded myself of my worth. I focused on the positive changes I had made in my life and the love and support I had from Jake. It was a difficult moment, but I got through it stronger. As I continued to grow, I also became more compassionate towards others. I realized that everyone has their own struggles and insecurities. This understanding helped me form deeper and more meaningful connections with people. I learned to be kinder to myself and to others. Our relationship continued to flourish. We faced challenges and celebrated successes together. We grew individually and as a couple. We learned to navigate the ups and downs of life with love and understanding. Looking back, I realized that the journey we had been on was not just about overcoming a specific issue but about growing and evolving as individuals and as a couple. It was about learning to love and accept ourselves and each other. It was about building a strong foundation of trust, communication, and support. And most importantly, it was about embracing the imperfections and uncertainties of life with grace and resilience. As I sat in the park with Jake, watching the sunset, I felt a deep sense of peace and gratitude. Our journey was far from over, but I was confident that we could face whatever lay ahead together. I had learned to love myself and to trust in the love we shared. Our relationship was stronger because of the challenges we had faced and the growth we had experienced. I knew that as long as we continued to support and understand each other, we could overcome any obstacle. Life would always have its ups and downs, but we were ready for them. We had built a foundation of love, trust, and mutual respect, and that was something I knew would carry us through whatever came our way. I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment as I reflected on how far we had come, both individually and as a couple. We had grown together, supported each other, and learned to love each other in deeper, more meaningful ways. As the years went by, our bond only grew stronger. We continued to support each other's dreams and ambitions, always encouraging one another to reach new heights. Our relationship was a partnership in the truest sense of the word, built on a foundation of mutual respect, understanding, and love. We faced new challenges together, from career changes to personal struggles, but we always faced them as a team. Our commitment to each other and to our relationship never wavered. We knew that as long as we had each other, we could get through anything. Looking back on those early days, I realized how much we had both grown. We had learned so much about ourselves and each other. Our love had been tested and had come out stronger. We had built a life together that was full of love, laughter, and mutual respect. I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together. Our journey was far from over, but I was ready for whatever lay ahead. I had learned to love myself, to trust in our love, and to embrace the beauty of our imperfect, yet perfect relationship. And I knew that as long as we continued to support and understand each other, we could overcome any obstacle that came our way.